How you doing, guys? Welcome back to the Football Diary podcast and another day where I can celebrate being a Man United fan in front of Myles. How you doing, mate? How did you find today's game? What's the summary for you?
I'm wearing a Roma shirt, even that was better. They beat United this week, to be fair. I can claim that one, can't I?
They did, and that was a nervous watch for a United fan, even with 8 goals into hands over aggregate. That was still a flipping nervous game to watch, honestly.
Without De Gea, Roma were going to do that.
I think so. They were putting on so much pressure that could have happened. And do you know what? As a United fan, I was sitting there thinking, I don't want to watch this now. This could go really horribly wrong, historically wrong. Anyway, let's move on from that. We'll start off talking about Europe, but probably the Champions League first. So English teams in the Champions League final again, second time in the last 3 seasons that it's happened. So Chelsea and Man City. I think it's probably fair to say the 2 most informed teams in Europe in the Champions League, definitely. Thomas Tuchel's arrival at Chelsea has spurred them on to completely different heights. And I think City are clicking into a really sort of slick-looking team, like they have been in the past, but they're actually showing it on the European stage. So I think it's a fitting final. Myles, what did you make of the performances of the 2 teams? And, you know, English football teams in general, are they back at the top of the European game now?
It looks that way, doesn't it? Because it's, like you say, over the last few years, there has been a bit more English dominance. We had the All-English Europa League final that year as well, with Tottenham, Liverpool, Champions League, and Arsenal, Chelsea, Europa League. This year, we nearly had an All-English Europa League final as well. So, I mean, if in 3 seasons you've had, 7 teams in the finals, maybe even more than that. I can't remember what the final was last year. No, yeah, it's 7 teams in the finals. That's impressive. That's a really, really good stat. So, yeah, it looks like English teams are holding their own. Man City embarrassed PSG in that second leg. PSG, honestly, Ander Herrera said something about, they can all go home with their heads held high. Not a chance. They were embarrassing, not only in their performance and not being able to achieve anything without Mbappe on the pitch, but just their attitude. Anytime that you start to think that they might be a little bit likeable, you just lose all that faith in them. Like, Mbappe is obviously an amazing player, so it's easy to get behind him. Pochettino's obviously got that likeable spirit about him. But just, you watch PSG and you just think, I can't stand anything about them. The petulance of that performance when they realised they were out, so their aim was just, let's see who we can take down with us. Horrible. If you were talking about someone like Sergio Aguero about to end his time at Man City and probably see out the top part of his career is probably done. If he got an injury in that game because of the way that Kimpembe wanted to throw himself about, or Paredes, like, how can you respect yourself for that? They're still professionals at the end of the day, and whether you're losing or not. Man City didn't do anything wrong in that game. PSG weren't robbed by a bad decision or anything. They were just outclassed. So to have that reaction was horrible to watch.
And to be honest, I think there were stages where they were still in the game, but obviously City put them out of sight. I think the second half of the first leg, they turned it around massively. And ever since then, they were sort of really fighting to get back into the tie. And the moment the first City goal went in the second leg, you could see their heads just go. And you're right, petulance crept in. It was almost like they threw the board up in a game of Monopoly and just thought, well, we're not going to go out in grace now. We're just going to throw it up and just make it a petulant affair. And it was. And to be fair, to credit to Man City, they actually continue to play some fantastic football around some horrific looking challenges going in as well. So, fair play to City for that.
They almost got better because PSG had just lost their shape in their heads, so it was easier to play around. It wasn't the efficient performance that Pochettino would have wanted, and players like Foden were allowed to express themselves then. I will say as well, somehow still, I feel like Riyad Mahrez is really underrated. I know he went for big money to Man City, and people acknowledge that he was fantastic at Leicester, but I feel like because he had that time at Leicester, he's always kind of viewed as the underdog. I'd rather have Riyad Mahrez in my team than Neymar, off the back of what he's achieving at the moment. Yeah. He's so threatening. He dominated that semi-final. He looked absolutely fantastic. And not just going forward. The amount of times he tracked Neymar back and won the ball was amazing. I thought he was so classy. I really like Mahrez.
I think as a team, City were, to a man, really on it. You could see the spirit when Ruben Dias, I think it was, blocked a really dangerous shot. And the team were just celebrating like they scored. And that's the kind of thing that's been missing from City in previous seasons. But this season, they've gelled brilliantly. And like you said, you've got players like Mahrez, Foden, all kind of taking on that forward line to a different level. Not just that, you've got people like Sterling waiting in the wings who are now suddenly part of the Man City B team, which is mad to think. And their A team and their B team could equally compete in the Premier League. So terms of squad depth, they are looking really, really good. And I think the same could be said for Chelsea. We'll go on to them in a bit, but the signings they've made have sort of made their squad almost on a par, I think, for strength with City. So it's going to be a tasty looking final. Dave, what did you make of the City performance first of all?
I thought it was a tactical display by them, especially. You didn't often see Man City get dominated on the ball, and they were happy to let PSG have the majority of the possession of the ball, and they kind of played how United play against Man City. It was funny to watch because they kind of sat back and, they hit them on the break like effectively, and they kept the ball when they needed to. To be honest, there wasn't that many times. Apart from the first 15 minutes where PSG, had quite a few chances, it was in the same in the first game as well, where they sort of had that mini blip. And once they weathered that, they looked quite comfortable, really. And obviously, as it went on, PSG just became more and more frustrated, and it kind of obviously showed through the actions of, Di Maria, what he did. Absolutely ridiculous. They're still in with a shout, even obviously. They had the deficit, they were still up against it. They still only needed to score a couple of goals, which, they've got the players of turning the game on its head.
Yeah.
It only takes one goal and your momentum is with you. So I can't say I'm surprised. Like my brother messaged me that night, said, I guarantee you PSG player is going to get sent off. Like, obviously, the game was unfolding and it happened. And it's just, they've got sort of a mental block. Like, they've no mentality about them. They just seem to fold whenever they come, close, and they just haven't got the bottle. Really, it's a bit like the Spurs of French football.
But Di Maria is experienced enough to know better. In a world with VAR, why do you do that? You're never gonna get away with that. What's he thinking? It's honestly, you see, back before VAR, things like that probably happened so often and would go unannounced. And you'd still see a red card after time, even if the ref didn't clock it. So what he thought he was doing, he should definitely know better.
Well, that's what Dave was saying. It's a mentality thing. I think both City and PSG had to get the mentality right to get through this hurdle, really, because they've both struggled with latter stages of European competition. It is just the mentality of being at that level. And City showed that they've passed that test brilliantly. Their players have obviously learned from their experiences, but PSG, it's the same story. It's the same PSG we've seen come undone in previous seasons in the Champions League. And like you said, Dave, there was an air of inevitability that Di Maria got sent off or someone got sent off because they just lost their heads completely. And that begs the question, really, where does that leave PSG now? I mean, Neymar has just signed a new contract, hasn't he, till 2025. So he's sticking around. But they've got players who I don't think many teams could afford. Mbappe, unless someone buys him out for a massive fee, is still going to be there. Can they actually shake off that poor mentality, that semi-final block that they've got? Even the final, when they got to it, they didn't look like they were up for it particularly. They looked outclassed, outthought, out-tacticked. So where does that leave them, Myles? Is PSG still going to be a European superpower for the next few years? Or can you see their squad needing a complete refresh for that to happen?
Both, because it will happen, I think. I look at that squad there and it still seems so top-heavy. Yeah. Marquinhos and Kimpembe are very good centre-backs. But when you looked at the full-backs that PSG had to pick from, Florenzi's out on loan from Roma, and I like him, but he's not going to win the Champions League for you. And if you look at how modern football has developed, fullback has become one of the most important positions there is. And they really lack depth there. Keylor Navas is fantastic, but then you look at their midfield. I love Marco Verratti. I think he's a fantastic player. But around him, they've got Idrissa Gueye, who, does a job, is efficient, but he's not a world beater. He's not the kind of caliber of a holding midfielder of someone like N'Golo Kante. Or even Fernandinho, who was amazing in that game as well, which at 36 is incredible. They don't have De Bruyne in their midfield. So you've got this wealth of attacking options, but you're relying on them creating everything for themselves, really. Paredes is not really an efficient footballer. He's just a dog in midfield, it feels like. He runs around snapping at people with a load of energy, but doing what? You got someone like Draxler that barely plays and his confidence has fallen off. So they definitely need investment in essential positions rather than glamour positions, which how many times have we had that conversation about PSG?
Well, you're right. I think they're just lacking a lot of balance, aren't they? Like you said, I mean, you looked at the contrast to Man City's team. Every signing has been made, albeit with a pretty premium price tag, but with a position and a role in mind. And you can see PSG's spending plans for the last 10 years laid out there. There wasn't a spending plan. It was a transfer first policy. They wanted the name before the role to be filled. And that was kind of exposed quite brutally, really.
They will spend big this summer, though, I think. They're one of the only clubs who can afford to. And it looks like they're not even going to win the French league this year. So they'll probably go out. They'll bring in someone like Camavinga from Rennes and have like the future sort of solidified. Maybe bring in a couple of fullbacks to cover that, because Wan-Bernat and Florenzi probably won't be starting games next season. I'm not sure who, but there's still enough of a pool. They still got to the semi-final, so it's not the biggest failure ever. And a lot of people would have had City as the favourites going into this tournament. They knocked out Bayern. So I don't think it's a case of all their bottle jobs again. They got to the final last year. They beat Bayern this year. Man City just outclassed them. And if Mbappe plays, maybe it's a different game in that second leg. Who knows?
Well, it's similar to the Lewandowski situation for the Bayern tie.
Yeah.
If he was in the Bayern team for both those legs, I've no doubt Bayern would have been through to the next round. So, kind of a few what ifs for PSG once again.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Dave, what's your thoughts on PSG? Can you see them pushing to get to a sort of Champions League final berth next season, or even win the competition anytime soon?
There's too many divas in that team.
That's a good word.
Okay. To be honest, it just shows like Neymar in that club. How long has he been at PSG now? Is it 3 years?
Yeah, I think so. 3-4 years.
And I think it just shows if they must have a project outlined and something set up for the summer for him to commit his future to PSG, or they just offered him a ridiculous sum. He's getting paid 500 grand a week.
Not even that. Just
Barca
can't afford him anymore.
I just don't think. There's a mixture of teams not being able to afford him, but also I don't think money is a thing for him now. He's earning so much. Surely he doesn't need any more. Surely it's just a case of professional pride now. What is he, 27, 28? The clock's ticking for him to win some big prizes. So I think he just needs to see out the last 5-10 years of his career, if he goes that long, with a winning team. Are PSG that team? I don't know. I suppose we'll find out in a couple of years' time whether he actually thinks it's a project worth sticking around for. But at the minute, it could be, potentially. And it's mad to think that Thomas Tuchel at Chelsea is turning them around so much, yet he was PSG coach not that long ago. So tactically, they had the right guy in charge last season, but the players just didn't fit. And even he couldn't make them fit to any kind of system. So I think just a massive overhaul is needed. They do need some money spending, but it needs to be targeted transfers. Camavinga would be fantastic for them. But I've heard them in the same breath on about signing Serge Aurier from Tottenham. You talk about wing backs. What the hell? That's just not a good fit at all.
People love the Paris lifestyle. Get them back.
Yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, moving on to Chelsea, Real Madrid. Chelsea were equally dominant in both ties against Real Madrid as City were in theirs. And that just says a lot about the quality of the squads in Premier League teams at the very top versus the rest of Europe. Dave, were you impressed by Chelsea? Do you think they've got a really good chance of beating City? I certainly think City would prefer to have played Real Madrid based on what we've seen.
100%, yeah. I've been saying this actually for the last few weeks, that I think Chelsea are the team to beat Man City, and obviously we saw it yesterday. Obviously, it was only a dress rehearsal, and Man City did kind of rotate for the game, but I think Chelsea have shown in the last few years their template has been solid, and Tuchel as a manager, he's got them very well drilled, and I think personally, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they beat them in Champions League.
Isn't that mad to think? Because I think of the Frank Lampard tenure at the end of his time there, it felt like there was no cohesion with any of the players. He had some quality signings, to his credit. So whoever was sort of scouting to fill the holes in their team had scouted right, but again, very top heavy. And they just needed somebody to get those pieces, especially in the front of the team, at the very front end, working together. So Kai Havertz was a quality player in the Bundesliga. So was Timo Werner. They weren't firing at all. Their defence looked suspect with Thiago Silva there. Now suddenly their three at the back system looks watertight. They've conceded, 10 10 goals in 20 games or something, and 5 of them are against West Brom, which is mad. So Chelsea, I think, are going to be bloody hard to beat.
I think they're lacking a top striker still, and there's talk of Lewandowski's future and where he's going to end up going this summer if he decides to stay final or not. So, you know, that he won't be short of options, put it that way.
Yeah, I think Chelsea definitely want to watch, and I think they'll be pushing for the title next season because they've got the players. But then it begs the question about Real Madrid again, in the same breath as PSG. Do Real Madrid look like a team that are at the very top of European football now? Because looking at squad depth, their bench didn't look half as impressive as Chelsea's, which is mad to think. A few seasons ago, Chelsea would have been massive underdogs against Real Madrid. But now the tiles turned so much in terms of like you couldn't see Chelsea losing that European football for me just seems a weird place to be at the moment because there's no one really at the top of their game apart from those few Premier League teams. So what's going on? What's happening? And where did Real Madrid come back into this? Do they need a massive overhaul in the same sort of way PSG do?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Real Madrid in particular, they've got a really old squad now. And even the younger players that they've tried to bring through, Zidane doesn't like. And you think that a few years ago, they went on this investment project to bring in players like Odegaard, even Dani Ceballos, Odriozola, Hakimi, all of these young players that look like they were going to be the future. Where are they all now? None of them are at Real Madrid. They're still playing Toni Kroos and Modric, who are fantastic, don't get me wrong. But have they got the legs to win a European Cup anymore? Well, we saw no. Chelsea pulled them apart in midfield across the two legs, particularly that first leg. And N'Golo Kante was outstanding in both matches, but was allowed the space to be outstanding. If you think that his main job normally is screening that back four, picking the ball up, and then carrying it forward a little or finding Jorginho or Mount, whoever it may be, you didn't need to do any of that. You just kept running forward because why not?
It's the first time I've ever seen Kante in that much of a free role because he didn't look like a defensive midfielder at all. And I think he played him in a much more advanced position, knowing that he'd have that kind of space, which is mad. It's Real Madrid.
Do you remember when Sarri came in and all the criticism was, why are you playing Jorginho as a holding midfielder and playing Kante further up the pitch?
Yeah.
Kind of saw why a bit late this week.
Yeah.
He was brilliant there. But Real Madrid didn't offer much. And I think Zidane will be really, really frustrated with that. But you've got to question some of the decisions that he's made. All right, Odegaard's not light in the Premier League, but he did a very good job in La Liga last season. And they looked like they really missed creative threats for Real Madrid this season. So maybe Odegaard would have slipped in there. If they win today, then they'll go top of La Liga. But again, that seems like three bold men fighting over a comb at the moment. None of them know what to do with it.
Crazy,
they keep bottling it every 5 seconds, Atletico, Barca and them. So who knows with Spain at the moment? They seem way off the pace. And the stuff with Hazard afterwards was hilarious. Have you both seen that clip from the Spanish sports show?
Yeah, it's well over the top dramatic, isn't it? It's mad. Anyone would think he'd murdered somebody, but well, they did it to Gareth Bale as well, didn't they? It's mad.
Play golf, you're an enemy. Laugh with some of your old teammates. How dare you? No, I'll be amazed if Hazard if he plays again for him the way that
I don't think they can afford to get rid of him because they've just got no money. And I think Gareth Bale will probably walk back into that team right now, looking at how their squad depth options are. They're looking like a threadbare team. And with the midfield three of Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, and even Casemiro knocking on now quite a bit, are they going to be there in 2-3 years' time? And Ramos, who's on a free
Marcelo
this season. Yeah, it's a lot of expensive sort of positions to fill. And if you're Real Madrid, you're going to want expensive players to fill them. But they should have been doing this over the last 2 or 3 seasons. And instead, they signed players like Hazard, like Luka Jovic, who hasn't had a sniff, but he's smashing in goals in the Bundesliga again. And they just don't look like a team that spent money wisely, a bit like Barca. They've spent a few £100 million on a few players and got what to show for it, a mountain of debt. It's mad. But anyway, moving on to Spanish teams, we'll go to Villarreal next. So the Europa League Final has been set. Man United and Villarreal. Amazing to see Unai Emery get one back over Arsenal. I think he had a rough ride there. They took the mick out of him for some weird reasons. So we're good to see Villarreal actually put one over Arsenal. Although Arsenal put up no fight whatsoever in their tie. It was a really terrible semi-final and a terrible advert for the Europa League, to be fair. But United-Villarreal, Dave, how do you see that one panning out? Have Villarreal got a decent chance there, or do you think United will be too strong?
I think if the United that we know and how the United of the second half today and if they turn up, then I can just see us being too powerful and too good for them. But it's a final, it's one game, you never know, and we've shown that we've not performed in semi-finals. So what we're going to do in a final, I don't
uncharted territory really for Solskjaer, isn't it? He's never been in a final, so
I think the only thing at the minute I can be positive about is that we're finding a way to win games, and I think we're the first team in Premier League history to go behind in 10 games, and then come back and win, and that's ridiculous, really.
Was it 31 points recovered from losing positions now this season? Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Is that positive though, or is that a really worrying?
I don't know how to take that.
For me, it is a worry, and especially when you're playing the big teams. I think we've been a bit unadventurous, really, against some of the big teams this year, and we've not come out on top in a lot of the big games. And I feel like there's still a lack of trust in our defence, especially with, like we saw today, with Lindelof. And I think my only worry is, like today, are we going to keep turning these games around? Because it only takes one game for it to be not all day, and that could be the final of a European competition. So we need to sort this defensive issue out in the summer and get a centre back in.
We need to sort it out sooner than that, because if Harry Maguire's not fit.
It's a recurring theme. It's the same conversations every other week. We'll be all right one game, the next game, we'll make a ridiculous few errors and we get away with a couple of them, but concede a goal and another one. It's frustrating, but yeah, I think I'll back United obviously to take that one. I won't put a score in though.
Can I ask you two a question? So, in the midst of all of this, United qualifying for the final, we've not talked in a couple of weeks. What about last weekend? How do you feel about the Man United-Liverpool scenario from last weekend with all the fan protests? Well, as United fans,
it's not surprising. I'm kind of glad to see some fight and some answers being requested or demanded from the board. It's a shocking but not surprising situation to see the board respond not at all in some cases, or very little. But the fans did the right thing, I think, in making some kind of change happen. They got the game abandoned, which I think was a statement, a massive statement. The biggest game we could play is Liverpool. The way they went about it is questionable. A few of the fans took it far too far, which we don't want to see. But the point has been made, and the fans have got a lot of power. And I think United fans, especially, they're in so many numbers. There's so many of us that we can make change happen if we want to. I feel like we're probably going to start seeing more board interaction because of things like that happening. How much is entirely up to the Glazers. I can't see them changing at all, hardly at all. They say that they want fans on board level decisions, but I can't see them doing the 51% sell-off, like in the Bundesliga model. That's just not going to happen at United. It's not going to happen in the Premier League because it's just not the way football works when it's this profitable. They're not going to sort of sacrifice more than half of their shares to fans, even for the greater good. So do I agree with it? Yeah, wholeheartedly. I wish I was there with them. Is it going to make a difference? Maybe a small amount of difference short term. It's just got to happen in some way, shape or form, constantly and consistently to make voices heard.
That's the difference, isn't it?
It's not a flash in the pan.
So far, you worry that it's almost been counterproductive because you saw the response from the owners. There wasn't one at first.
Horrible, yeah.
Horrible to see. And all that happened was now United have got a more congested fixture schedule before a major final. So it needs to keep happening. If anything will change, surely, just without the violent approach. Because unfortunately, a lot of the message got lost as soon as that happens, which is the case in any protest, whether that be football or not. As soon as one person decides, I'm going to take this too far, press will spin it as this person took it too far, therefore they all took it too far. And the owners can go back to that as well, why are we going to listen to those fans who just put a police officer in hospital? And that frustrates me a lot that it goes too far. But I'll be surprised if nothing else happens. I thought even this weekend, the other clubs would do the same thing. Arsenal are about to kick off. I thought their fans might do something. I haven't seen what's happened there, but I think it needs United not being on their own for it to make a difference.
The only reason they've eventually come out with a statement is because obviously the news that's come out today is that United have lost a £200 million sponsorship deal with the Hook Group, obviously for our training kit next season. Obviously, they've seen all these reviews that, United sponsors getting on Trustpilot, and thought, oh, do you know what? This is too big of a risk. We really going to get much from the field. That's the only reason the Glazer statements come out, because they're now thinking, oh, hit the fan, and it's hit them where it hurts, and that's in their checkbooks at the end of the day. And that there's absolutely nothing's going to change, is it really? Why would it change after 16 years, letting Old Trafford decay the way it has done? When
it is in a bad shape.
16 years ago, we had the best training ground in the league. We had the best facilities, the best stadium. Everyone's overtaken us. Everyone in the league's probably got better facilities than we have now. And look at over the way at the Etihad, they've got that area. Gary Neville was discussing it, wasn't he, the other night, saying that area used to be awful, run down. Now it looks absolutely amazing, and they don't care. They'll let the stadium roof leak all they like. They'll probably let all the stuff go down, and they probably won't sort them. They're not bothered about it.
No, I was a little disappointed with Solskjaer's reaction to all of this as well. He just sort of came out and said, yeah, I've got a good relationship with the Glazers. That shows exactly why he's there, to be honest. Why Arteta is at Arsenal right now. Because clubs with owners like that are looking for yes men. They're not looking for Guardiola or people that are available right now, Allegri, who'll come in and go, yeah, I'll take the job, but I want this, and this. They're looking for people that will come in and go, okay, I'll do the best with whatever you want me to have. And that's really frustrating. I thought Solskjaer might have a bit more of an empathetic approach with the fans rather than the people who are paying him. I was quite disappointed by that.
I think the coaches have more power than they realise, but I think Solskjaer hasn't got that yet. I mean, Klopp has got a lot of clout at Liverpool, so I think he could really make change if he wanted to. Same with Guardiola. He is Man City right now, and if both of them left their clubs, then their whole project has just come falling down, wouldn't it? So that would be a statement if they did something or said something. So I'm with you there, Myles. If their clubs had done something, or their fans had done something at the same time as United, or not long after this weekend, that would have made a massive, massive statement. But they didn't. So at the moment, United fans are sort of a lone voice against their owners, but they've always been against their owners. So they're just more vocal about it because they've got more of a reason to shout now with the Super League situation. It's a lot more transparent what the Glazers are doing. And that's the annoying thing, I think, from a Man United fan. It's not annoying. It's actually infuriating. We didn't need them at their investment. We were absolutely self-sustainable with the model we had. We were making a ton of money because that's the way the club had got. It was a global brand that we'd built over 30 years of success. The Glazers come in and take a ton of money out of the club and put us in loads of debt that we just didn't need. So, we spent quite a bit of money on transfers over the last few years, but we could have spent loads. If it wasn't for the debt repayments that we were making, the Glazers have held us back. They've not helped us at all. So for United fans, they're just a cancer of the team. They really are. I think there's opportunity there for us to have been a mega club. And we're big, but we've fallen behind, like Dave said, so much now because of a lack of proper investment in infrastructure in the team. And Old Trafford is a really sorry-looking place to be at the minute. It's not a good-looking ground.
There's no consistency in it. They've spent a lot of money, but only at certain points. And if you want to be Man City, then you have to spend it a different way. I look at when Moyes came in, you signed Fellaini. That was it. That was all he got in that summer. What were you expecting from him? Then Mourinho, we talked about it the other week. I think you said it, Dave. Mourinho wanted Maguire. They said, no, don't need him. Don't need Alderweireld. A year later, they'll bring him in. So, they'll spend the money, but not at times to target actual sporting success. Only sign Maguire when it's financially lucrative for them as well because of the name he has now from being with England. It's really frustrating. And I think that with a lot of clubs, Arsenal are a perfect example as well. I was talking to my girlfriend's dad the other day about it, and he's long-term Arsenal fan, diehard Arsenal fan, and said exactly the same thing. Yeah, right, they spend 70 million on Pepe, but that's not enough on its own. You have to inject that money, and they make more money off their fans than anyone does. So where is that going? On Willian's contract. It's just, there's no planning with any of these things on a sporting level. It's just business, and that's really sad.
It's sad because I think Arsenal were one of those teams that fought their way to the top tier of English football in the 90s. And I think as a United fan, that was the biggest respect for me, that they achieved it through just perpetual success and investment in scouting and things like that. They got the right coach in place in Arsene Wenger. Whereas you look at the Chelsea and the Man City model, there's less to be sort of admirable about looking at them across their clubs and building it just through money that's been generated through oligarchs, etc. There's not as much respect attached to achieving any success with that. And I think whatever Man City achieve will always be sort of kind of tainted with a footnote of, yeah, but. Whereas Arsenal, on the other hand, they won the Premier League in absolute style in the 90s and noughties because they worked hard to get there. So I think as a rival team, seeing them in the state they're in is kind of sad. And, it's because their owners have just mismanaged them. And again, they didn't need any investment. They could have carried on under the model they were operating and they were just scouting very successfully. But they've changed so much now beyond the last 10 years that, like United, they're kind of unrecognisable in many ways. And it is really quite sad to see, isn't it?
But I think this week we saw the fruits of poor investment and looked at the difference between where those two clubs are at now. United have fallen off from the perch that they were on, but have still managed to maintain something because of that global brand and because there have been some of the decisions made correctly. Someone like Bruno Fernandes, someone like Cavani, influential enough that they were going to make a difference. Arsenal this week, we saw them against Villarreal. They could not break them down. And that's because who have they brought in? What decisions have they made that you would go, that was a good decision? The one that I go to, and it's an odd one, but I love Joe Willock. I think Joe Willock's really, really good player. I've said that since the start of the season, and he's doing brilliantly for Newcastle now.
Yeah.
Isn't that exactly the sort of thing that Arsenal could do with right now? Smith Rowe, everyone loves him. He's a decent player. He doesn't score goals. He hasn't scored a goal in the league yet this season. Willock's just scored 4 in a row. Who's making these decisions?
Why is he not at Arsenal? Yeah, you're right.
It's bizarre. I watched that game the other day with the Villarreal, and they couldn't break them down. They could not. If you've got a dynamic midfielder who will burst forward and do it, let him do it. Aubameyang, he's fallen off a cliff this season, but he looked the closest thing to a goal that Arsenal had. He hit the post twice, and then Arteta went, I'll take him off. Martinelli didn't start again. I can't get my head around that. He started today, I've seen.
Yeah.
It's just they don't have a plan, and that's from the top down. I was talking the other day about Sven Mislintat. That seemed like such a good appointment, and that fell apart. So then you bring in Edu, who again is going to be another yes man because he's been around the club for a while. So of course you're going to bring in the likes of Willian. It doesn't do anything for you. It's not sustainable. It's a cheap, easy option in terms of no transfer fee that actually is going to cripple your team in the long run. Who's thinking about that? If I can see that, and you can see that, and any other football, why can't people who are actually in the game see that? I just think that's bizarre.
Because they're not football people. That's the thing. They've got people at the very top who aren't inherently part of the football culture of England, especially, which again we've touched on is unique, and they just don't understand what fans want and what a club takes to be successful. And the thing is, clubs aren't profitable. They're not massively profitable. You've got to reinvest in squad. So I think anybody who's looking to take money out of a football club is going to be really surprised that there's not much money at the top of the game, especially the numbers of wages that are being paid for mediocre players like Willian, who's past his best, let's face it, but they shelled out as much as they did per week on him. It's mad. Anyway, you've opened up a can of worms there, Myles. Blimey.
Quick shout out before we move away from the Europa League for the fact that if it hadn't been for De Gea, Roma might have shocked Man United in that second leg. Yeah. They gave it a good go.
They did. Dave, what happened to United in that second leg? Sum it up for us.
Taking the two halves, really. I don't even think we were particularly brilliant in the first half, but thought Roma were neck and neck, really. The second half, obviously we got the goal. Second half, we made them substitutions, anticipating that it wouldn't affect us, and the obviously bringing the two wing backs on. Both at the same time, very, very early on, obviously in the second half. It just completely changed the flow of the game. And instead of having Luke Shaw kind of pushing their right side back, it allowed them to, kind of advance down both wings. And it just pinned us back, and we couldn't really get out at times. And we went through this crazy period where they had about 5 shots on goal within like 30 seconds. And you just looked like every time they were going to come forward, they were going to score. And it was a bit of a flashback to vintage De Gea, really, that we had. It took me back to that game when we played Liverpool and we won 3-0, but I think he saved like 8 one-on-ones or something.
Yeah.
So we had him to thank for that. Had it been tighter than it would he have made them substitutions? No, of course he wouldn't. He wouldn't have brought on, Williams and Tellez. Tellez had the worst game I've ever seen.
He was terrible, yeah. I agree.
It looked like we brought a fan on, and just chucked him at left back, and he didn't have any positional sense of what it sort of didn't really look like he knew.
He wasn't alone, Dave. The whole back four looked absolutely terrified because Roma were putting on so much pressure, and credit to them, they were really pushing for goals because they could smell goals in this team.
They were getting the ball out the net when they scored. They thought they could do it. I
did. I think we all did. I thought there was a chance, definitely. But thankfully, Edison Cavani popped up and saved us, really, because without his quality, I think we'd have really been in trouble. So
only De Gea who turned up on the night. Cavani and De Gea playing. Yeah. Everyone else was sort of a passenger bit. But yeah, I think we've got him to thank for that, and he'll obviously start the final, De Gea. So
yeah, might be his farewell. Who knows?
We've not talked about Mourinho either.
I don't want to talk about Mourinho. We spoke enough about Mourinho last time. Go on then. Have you say on Mourinho, Miles? Is he the right man for Roma?
Yeah, I said it a couple of weeks ago. I could see him ending up going back to Italy, and Roma would be a good destination. I see it working. He's loved in Italy still. He's absolutely loved in Italy, and I think the kind of passion of football, like I said the other week, will really suit him. And although Roma aren't in the best moment, they're a huge club still. The only problem Roma have is they are going to need a lot of investment to catch up. And they're talking about moving stadiums as well, because Roma don't own their own stadium. So that's always going to be difficult when you're trying to generate revenue. So they're talking about moving stadium, but then they need a lot of squad investment. They've got some really good young players coming through. And the likes of Justin Kluivert and Cengiz Under, who went out on loan, may come back if their clubs don't exercise the option to buy them. Who knows what Mourinho will think of that squad when he gets there. But he's a name, and that will bring players to the club on its own. As much as people may laugh at Mourinho here, and as much as he may have had difficult times, I can see it being a good match. Maybe it's just optimism, but I've wanted Mourinho to be at a club that I can cheer on for a really long time. I really like Mourinho, and all right, there might be times where he's a bit boring, but I'm quietly optimistic that he'll at least get them back into the Champions League next year, and then we'll see where he can build from there.
Well, let me tell you now, just to save you having to go through all of that, Mourinho at a club that you like is a massive anticlimax and ends up being ridiculously negative. So, fast forward, 18 months, and you might see that for yourself, mate.
Not in Italy.
I don't get why he's so revered a decade past the last bit of success he had there. I mean, are they not looking at what he's been doing in the Premier League since his return there? He's been awful.
It was the last job that he didn't get sacked from, and it was the last person to win the title other than a Juventus manager until this year. So I think they just looked at it like, we could do with that again. Inter were fantastic under Mourinho. They won the Champions League. People don't forget that quickly.
No, but they had a team of quite senior pros who played their heart out for him. I think that's the thing he's missing in teams now. He needs that core of players that are so loyal to him that they'll just run through walls. And at Tottenham, it just didn't have that. I think Kane thought a lot of him. I don't think many of the other pros were particularly taken to him, and that kind of showed really, didn't it? They didn't show up for him on the pitch. But moving on from Mourinho, I'm just going to touch on the Premier League before we go. There's not been much going on, really. I think we said before we went and recorded on this that for a week, that's quite full of football on paper, there wasn't actually a lot going on. So, I mean, the headline really is Friday night's game, Leicester versus Newcastle. They lost 4-2 at home to a Newcastle team with not really that much to play for. They're kind of safe already from relegation. So, Dave, what happened at the King Power?
Well, obviously, one of their excuses is that obviously Johnny Evans got injured in the warm-up. But at the end of the day, your defence you send out is the defence you send out. You've still got to defend properly, and they literally just fell to pieces. They were a bit all over the place, really. And Newcastle actually exposed their frailties at the back, and it's not the first time this has happened with Leicester. And you look at their running towards the end of the league. They've obviously got United Tuesday, but then Chelsea, then Tottenham. So you're looking at them and thinking they've probably got to win at least 2 of those games to probably get in the top 4, because everyone's kind of, it's getting tight there. It's getting congested again for the top 4 for the top 4 spot. So those 2 games they've just had, Southampton and Newcastle, they probably would have looked at those 2 fixtures and think, right, these are winnable, winnable ties. We should be getting 6 points, and they've got 1 point from 2 games, and they've only got themselves to blame again, really. And it's not a new thing for Brendan Rodgers to have dodgy endings to his seasons. It happened last year. It happened when they were 7 points clear at the top of the league with Liverpool.
Yeah,
it's
fair point.
A bit strange theme with him, and I don't really know. I can't really explain it. I can't put my finger on it.
Well, he's had a pretty decent, unparalleled run of success with Celtic before joining Leicester, didn't he? So this is the first kind of time he's had for a number of years where he's had to fight to get to where he needs to be. And I think he's probably learning bit by bit what to do to get there, but the players aren't quite keeping up. I'm sure his message to the players is pretty clear, but they're just not producing it on the pitch for him. He had so many players that were really sloppy in possession against Newcastle, really, really poor. I mean, look at Soyuncu for the Willock opener. He was horrendous. And you're right, I think they missed Johnny Evans that much because there was no leadership on the pitch with him on off the pitch, really. There was no sort of anybody to sort of shout at the defence apart from Schmeichel, but it just fell on deaf ears. Schmeichel kept them in it for a while because he played pretty well. He made a couple of good saves, but defensively they looked really, really fragile without Johnny Evans there. I mean, if he was 26, 27 now, how much would he be worth, really? He's been a brilliant player for them. But they need strength in depth to compete, don't they, really? So, I mean, they've got some very good young up-and-coming players. I mean, their defence looks good in a couple of years' time, but they're still learning. So they just need to learn a bit faster if they want to compete at this level, really, don't they?
It's so frustrating because it's opened the door for Liverpool again, hasn't it, a little bit?
It has, yeah.
I really, really don't want to see that. Leicester getting knocked out at the top 4 by Liverpool on the last day. That'd be horrible.
It's looking tough, though. They need United to do them a massive favour, don't they, in their game? Because if United beat Liverpool, then it's game on.
I said it to you the other day, and it was kind of laughed at. But I will say, the Premier League is boring right now because everything is already decided. But Man United have got to play twice more now before City play again, which would put them 3 points behind Man City. Now, City will have played less games, but that's pressure all of a sudden that City have not felt for a really long time. And if you'd said that with United only having 2 games left, they would be 3 points off first, you'd snap someone's hand off for that. That's a smidgen of a title race back then. Who knows?
I would, but do you know what? They've drawn 10 games this season. That tells its own story. We're buckling under pressure as much as you say sort of Leicester are at this stage. And I can see United dropping points anyway in that run up to equaling the amount of games that City have got. So the games in hand don't really count really until we're in a tough run of games. United are in terms of how tough it's going to be to play. What is it, 4 in a week or something they've got coming up? That's going to be a slog. So I wouldn't
dream
count.
for competition, Mike. Don't ruin it. The Premier League's boring at the moment. Let's just hope for this one.
And title race is on. Let's do this. Come on, come on. Okay, title race is not on, but the top 4 definitely is. So, Dave, what's your opinion on who's going to be where now? Because West Ham lost 1-0 to Everton today, which is a massive blow for them. Even City losing to Chelsea at the weekend, and Sergio Aguero's crazy Panenka penalty attempt, ruining that for them. You can see how furious Guardiola was with that. And do you know what? If that's Aguero's sort of farewell, I'll be gutted for him because that's terrible. How's the top 4 looking now for you, Dave? Who's in charge?
I still think it will be the same top 4 now, or however, I think probably Chelsea will finish ahead of Leicester in 3rd position.
Yeah, I think they are now, aren't they? It's Chelsea 3rd, Leicester 4th.
United will definitely rest players against Leicester on Tuesday. I can tell you that now, because obviously they got Liverpool 2 days later, and who would you rather lose against, Liverpool or Leicester? And you're losing to Leicester, you're actually giving a big, you're giving the bird, so to speak, to Liverpool, because they're still trying to get top 4, and if Leicester are getting points over us, that means that's kind of keeping Liverpool out of the top 4 as well. So I think that inevitably, obviously, a club won't ever think like that, or a manager won't ever think like that. Or state it, but it's inevitably there's going to be changes against Leicester playing 2 days later. Not even probably 24 hours rest. It's just impossible. Like I don't understand it really.
Yeah, so that just shatters the theory of a title race, then, doesn't it? Because they're going to lose points. I think if they're going to have to rotate that heavily, they'll lose points.
It worries me for the Euros. I mean, we already saw Maguire go off today, but you think about players like Rashford as well. He's played so much football this season, and then you're going to burn him out. He's got to play. I think the Europa League Final is in 17 days. So between today and then, he's playing 6 games or something ridiculous.
Well, I think England are in a better position to rotate than United are, weirdly, because we've talked about this before. Their attacking options, especially in the wider areas, they're pretty healthy. So I think rotating Rashford for loads of different alternatives in his position is not going to be a big deal for Gareth Southgate necessarily, as much as it has been for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So,
and they can take 26 now as well, which is good.
True. So Grealish, if he's fit, will be in with a big shout, I think, in starting on the left probably for England in that case.
Foden might start there, you know.
Who, Foden?
Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah. It's hard to see a world where him and Mason Mount don't start for England. They've just been so good lately. It's really frustrating for Grealish that he's had this injury. But Foden and Mount have been outstanding lately.
With the amount of football they've been playing and how close the Champions League final is going to be to the start of the Euros, don't you think that might work against them both?
Maybe. But this big squad allows, like you say, a chance for rotation. And if you go deep in the tournament, you're going to have to rely on a lot of players. So maybe they'll all get a chance. But yeah, we'll see.
So top 4, are you agreeing with Dave on that one, that 3rd and 4th will be as it is, basically Chelsea and Leicester? Or is there a chance for Liverpool, West Ham, or even Everton to sneak in there?
I want to agree with Dave. I definitely want to agree with Dave. But the fixtures that Leicester have left make it very hard to.
Yeah.
I'm going to say I agree with Dave because I can't bring myself to say that I think Liverpool will get into the top 4. Or maybe Spurs will do it somehow. Is that mathematically possible still?
We haven't even talked about their 3-1 defeat to Leeds, which was an absolute capitulation. So, no, I think their hopes for the top 4 are finished. And I think Harry Kane will rightly be looking elsewhere for the summer. It'd just be a case of just let me look elsewhere for a club because I've got ambitions and Tottenham can't fulfill them. And that's the end of the story, really, for them. I can't see him staying there. As loyal as he is.
Let's say City. No, let's say United are going to win the league because then it's exciting. Then City, then Leicester, then Liverpool, then Chelsea, then Leicester. Yeah, that's what I'll go with.
United, City, Chelsea, Leicester. Wow.
Yeah, why not?
That's a bold statement at this stage of the season.
Is that possible still? No, I'm joking.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. Could I just say as well, though, that Pep's selection against Chelsea yesterday was hilarious. I can't work out whether that was him just trying to completely confuse Tuchel for the final when he picks 11 different players.
Yeah, he will.
Or whether he was just trying something or... Pep's a weirdo, isn't he? He's a football
you say that, but Chelsea started with like Billy Gilmore, which was a bit of a curveball as well. So
at least
they both made massive changes. Yeah, true.
He picked one midfielder. Which usually he picks about 7.
Well, Pep picks players in random positions. He's got a sweeper keeper, for God's sake, who could probably take a free kick and a penalty better than most of the rest of the team. So
that's
just Pep Guardiola.
If City win the league over the next couple of games and then get a penalty final day of the season and Edison doesn't take it, I'm fuming. I captained him in my fantasy team a few weeks ago because I was convinced he was going to take the penalty. And then Rodri took it and I was gutted.
One day, mate. One day he'll be taking set pieces, I think.
Got to see it.
So. He's an outfield player, isn't he? With gloves. That's all he is.
Love to see that.
Anyway, we're out of time now. I think we've talked about pretty much everything that went on in the week. There's a few games that we didn't discuss and... it's best not to go there because they weren't that entertaining, to be fair. But for now, guys, thanks for your time. We're looking to potentially do a midweek podcast going forward at some point, so keep your eyes open for that. And what I will put on screen as well is just we've got a Discord server, so if you want to join that, there's a link there. So it'd be nice to sort of get some other fans to come in and chime in on the conversations we have off air, because we have some pretty cool conversations about football. We always go into a lot of depth about the things that are going on, and we take the mick out of each other no end. There's a lot of different fans amongst us from different teams, and it's good to have different perspectives on the game. So anyway, that's enough for now. Take care, guys. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you all soon.